Moscow, 1989. Deep beneath the granite bulk of the Lubyanka, in a chamber that smelled of stale tobacco and machine oil, a select cadre of the Soviet Navy's elite gathered. The room was a fortress of secrets, walls lined with soundproofed panels, a single projector humming like a distant engine, casting grainy slides onto a screen scarred by years of classified briefings. Ashtrays overflowed with cigarette butts, and the air hung heavy with the smoke of Belomorkanals, harsh, unfiltered reminders of the motherland's unyielding grit. Admiral Viktor Kuznetsov, a bear of a man with a chest full of medals from the Barents Sea patrols, leaned back in his creaking chair. His deputy, Captain First Rank Yuri Petrov, paced like a caged wolf, while a cluster of GRU analysts, pale intellectuals with thick glasses and thicker dossiers, huddled over grainy photographs smuggled from a U.S. Navy slipway in Groton, Connecticut. The images showed the sleek, predatory lines of the new American submarine, SSN-21 Seawolf, the crown jewel of Yankee undersea arrogance. Petrov flicked the lights low and advanced the slide. There she was, the beast in her cradle. 107 meters of angular steel, wider than a Typhoon-class behemoth at the beam, crammed with what the CIA leaks called exotic propulsors and advanced silencing. Petrov snorted, a bark of laughter that echoed off the concrete. Look at this circus act, comrades. 60 tons heavier than our Victor III's. Pumps, gearings, some digital wizardry they call optics mast. It's a floating laboratory, not a hunter-killer. Kuznetsov stubbed out his cigarette, his face splitting into a grin that revealed gold-capped teeth. Decadence, pure and simple. The Americans build their toys for parades, not the North Atlantic. Our Akulas can sprint at 40 knots submerged. Brutal, reliable engines that laugh at ice flows and storms. This Seawolf? One glitch in their fairy tale computers, and it's dead in the water, vulnerable as a ballerina in a blizzard. The room erupted in chuckles, the analysts nodding vigorously. One, a wiry hydroacoustics expert named Dr. Ivan Sokolov, jabbed a finger at the spec scribbled on the transparency. 9,100 tons submerged, 8 torpedo tubes, tomahawks and harpoons stacked like cordwood. And the noise. They claim it's quiet, but with all that complexity, our passive sonars will hear it snoring from Murmansk to Iceland. We've tracked their 688s, Los Angeles class, like whales in a bathtub. This one's just a fancier pig. Petrov slapped the table, his laughter booming. Exactly. Why chase shadows when we have the real prizes? They're carriers, Nimitz, Eisenhower, those are the fat cows we milk. SSN-19s from our Oscars, granites from the kilos. One salvo, and the Yankee fleet is scrap. But this? A sub that's too fat to hide, too fragile to fight. They fear our numbers, 200 boats to their handful. Our doctrine is ironclad. Swarm, overwhelm, endure. Kuznetsov lit another cigarette, exhaling a plume that curled like torpedo smoke. He remembered the war games off Kola. Victor III's knifing through the Norwegian Sea, outrunning NATO hunter-killers with sheer Soviet stamina. Their subs were forged in the fires of necessity, rugged diesel electrics and nukes with propellers that churned the deep like factory hammers, simple hydrophones, battle-tested sonars that pierced the ocean's roar. The West, soft, obsessed with gadgets that broke under pressure. See here, Sokolov interjected, flipping to a blueprint fragment. The Seawolf's pump jet propulsor, a shrouded impeller instead of blades. They think this makes them silent? Our MGK 500 sonars will pick up the cavitation from kilometers away. And the crew, 200 souls in a sardine can of electronics. One EMP burst from our RSM-52s and poof, blind and deaf. The Admiral's eyes gleamed with predatory certainty. We've planned for this. Our Delta Ivies lurk in the bastions, untouchable. Yankee subs come sniffing. We vector Akulas to the kill zone. This Seawolf is a joke, an expensive bluff to scare politicians, not sailors. He raised his glass of vodka, the ritual toast. To the fools who bet on complexity over courage, za rodinu. Glasses clinked amid more laughter, the projector clicking off. Maps of the Guyuk Gap unrolled across the table. Greenland, Iceland, UK, the choke point where Soviet boomers would slip to sea. The Seawolf was just another data point in their triumph. Superior numbers, unbreakable simplicity, men who could fix a reactor with a wrench and spite. The Americans built for comfort, Soviets for conquest. But as the meeting dissolved into murmurs of reports and redeployments, Sokolov lingered by the screen, tracing the sub's anechoic tiles with a skeptical finger. Still, the quieting tech, if it's half as good as they boast. Petrov clapped him on the back. Nonsense, doctor. Paper tigers sink first. Outside, the Moscow winter howled, but in that bunker, certainty burned brighter than any storm. The Soviet Navy slept soundly that night, dreaming of carrier graves and invisible triumphs. They had seen the enemy and laughed. Yet deep in the classified annexes, whispers of doubt began to stir. Intel fragments from traders in Groton hinted at tests. Seawolf running silent at 25 knots. Her signature fainter than ocean swell. Sokolov filed it away, dismissed as propaganda. After all, their logic was flawless. Numbers won wars. Simplicity endured. The projector cooled in the dark, its last slide frozen on the sub's predatory bow. A silent assassin, mocked by men who heard only their own echoes. Barents Sea, 1990. The ice pack groaned under a slate-gray sky, a frozen wasteland where the Soviet Northern Fleet reigned supreme. Captain Yuri Petrov commanded K-298, a sleek Akula-class hunter-killer, her 7-bladed propeller slicing the frigid depths like a scythe through wheat. Petrov's boat was the embodiment of Soviet undersea doctrine, 110 meters of no-nonsense nuclear fury, 8 533-meter tubes loaded with Type 53 65K torpedoes and SSN-15s, wire-guided killers that homed on a whisper, 8,000 tons submerged. But she moved with the grace of a barracuda, her OK-650 reactor pumping 430 megawatts into twin turbines that could hurl her to 35 knots without a burp. Petrov gripped the periscope handles in the attack center, his salt-crusted beard framing a face etched by a decade of cat-and-mouse games against NATO pickets. "Surface bearing 090, he growled into the 1VP intercom. The MGK 540 sonar suite hummed, a battle-hardened beast of passive arrays and flank-mounted hydrophones that drank in the ocean's symphony like a wolf scenting blood. No frills, just raw acoustic power refined in the crucible of the Guyuk Gap patrols. Up periscope. There, 15,000 meters off the bow, USS Louisville, a Los Angeles-class Los Angeles, Flight 2, the Seawolf's noisy predecessor. Her AN-BQQ-5 sonar was legendary, but Petrov knew her weaknesses. "Yankee pig, fat and predictable," he muttered. The Akula's doctrine was simple: outnumber, outlast, outfight. The motherland had 65 attack subs in the Northern Fleet alone, Victor III's, Alphas, Oscars, to the Americans 40-odd across the fleet. Swarm the carriers first, then pick off the escorts. Their Nimitz-class behemoths, those 100,000-ton leviathans with 90 aircraft apiece, were the crown targets. Easy to spot on radar, hulking silhouettes begging for P-700 Granite missiles from an Oscar II. One Oscar salvo, 24 hypersonics at Mach 2.5, could turn a carrier battle group into a boiling pyre. Why fear a single sub when you could bury it under waves of steel? Petrov's men were forged for this. Conscripts and volunteers who slept in hammocks amid humming diesels, fixing leaks with duct tape and determination. No air-conditioned galleys or video games, just hot borscht from insulated urns and lectures on proletarian vigilance. Their sonars didn't crash. They were analog brutes with vacuum tubes that shrugged off EMPs. "Comrade Captain," the sonar chief, Petty Officer Lenaev, reported from the blue-lit shack. "Contact Sierra 1. Yankee 688, cavitating at 20 knots. Bearing constant, range closing to 12 clicks. Flow noise like a freight train." Petrov's lips curled. Exactly as doctrine predicted. American subs chased speed over silence, their 7-bladed screws chewing water into froth. The Akula? She ran at 30 knots with a signature fainter than a kilo diesel on batteries, proven in exercises off Novaya Zemlya, where Petrov's boat had sunk, 2 Sturgeon class in a single drill. Soviet simplicity triumphed, propellers uncluttered by Yankee gimmicks, reactors with manual overrides that a mechanic could coax back from the brink. The West built for pilots who bailed at the first shudder, Soviets for sailors who embraced the storm. Match speed, go passive, Petrov ordered. The Akula ghosted forward, her rubber anechoic tiles, MT2 rafts, swallowing pings like a black hole. Doctrine Part 2, the Bastions. Deep layers in the Barents and Okhotsk seas, ringed by Sosis-like barriers of their own. The Irtish hydrophone field stretching from Franz Josef Land to Spitsbergen. Yankee subs entered at their peril. Delta IV boomers lurked 400 meters down, SS N-18s armed and oblivious, guarded by Petrov's wolves. 1 sea wolf sniffing around. Vector 3 Akulas. Flood the baffles with decoys, then torpedo from the blind spot. He thought back to the Lubyanka briefing, Kuznetsov's toast still warm in his gut, the sea wolf's vaunted pump jet. A shrouded fan that whined under strain. Sokolov's shark gill sonars would peel it like an onion, too wide at 12.3 meters beam, too heavy at 9,100 tons. She'd wallow in thermoclines, her crew of 140 pampered techies panicking at the first hull ping. Soviets had 30-man watches that rotated like clockwork, hydroacoustics experts who could triangulate a ping by ear alone. Numbers and grit, 250 subs total, from hunter-killers to Typhoon Titans displacing 48,000 tons, each a floating fortress. Con, sonar. Sierra 1 turning starboard, transient. Prop wash. Lenev's voice crackled with glee. Petrov smirked. The Louisville was dodging ghosts, her bow-mounted sonar painting false contacts from the ice noise. Classic Yankee fragility. Digital processors glitching in the clutter, where Soviet analog racks filtered truth from chaos. Flood tubes 1 through 4, Petrov commanded. Prepare firing solution. In war games last month, his Akula had killed a simulated sea wolf off Bear Island, outrunning her, outmaneuvering her pompous propulsor, slamming home a virtual wire-guided fish. The control room thrummed with certainty. Charts showed the grand strategy. Oscars and Slavas saturate the carriers with granites, 550-kilo warheads turning flight decks to slag, while Victors and Akulas cull the subs. No need for invisibility when you had volume. 200-plus torpedoes per boat, reloadable at sea. The Seawolf, 8 tubes, fancy ADCAP Mk-48s, but 1 hit from a Soviet UGST, and her pressure hull cracked like eggshell. Petrov lowered the scope, the ocean reclaiming its secrecy. Track steady, she's ours. His officers nodded, faces lit by the red glow of battle lanterns. Men who quoted Zhukov. Quantity has a quality all its own. The West's quality was a mirage. Subs that needed dry dock spas, crews that mutinied over coffee shortages. Soviets endured blackouts, reactor scrams. Arctic convoys, K-278 Komsomolets had burned and sunk, yet the fleet pressed on, unbreakable. As the Akula closed to 8 clicks, Petrov allowed himself a rare smile. The Seawolf was a myth, a propaganda prop to justify budgets. Their doctrine was the rock, overwhelm the noise, exploit the numbers, let Yankee complexity betray itself. Deep in the boat's heart, the reactor purred steadily, a Soviet heartbeat echoing across the abyss. But far below, in the shadow of a pressure ridge, something stirred. A faint ripple, dismissed as biology. The Louisville's sister, perhaps, or just the sea's murmur. Petrov's sonar shack stayed silent, their logic unassailed. Certainty was their shield, doctrine their sword. The silent killer would reveal itself soon enough, or so they believed. Barents Sea, 1990. Depth 220 meters, the Akula's pressure hull creaking like old bones under the ice canopy. Captain Yuri Petrov's world had narrowed to the red glow dials of the combat tracking table. Sierra 1, the Yankee Louisville, pinned at 6,000 meters, bearing 045 relative, speed speed 18 knots submerged. Her propeller song, a steady thrum of cavitation bubbles, painted her perfectly on the MGK 540's passive arrays. Petrov's lips peeled back in a hunter's grin. Solution locked. Fire 1. The order rippled through the control room like a shiver. Compressed air hissed, and the Type 53 65K torpedo leaped from the tube, its 400-kilo warhead trailing a thin copper wire back to the Akula's fire control. Soviet doctrine in motion. The fish would snake through the Louisville's baffles, dodge her countermeasures with acoustic homing finesse, and rip her keel at 50 knots. Petrov imagined the Americans' panic. Klaxons wailing in their climate-controlled CIC, tech-savvy officers fumbling reset buttons on glitching sonars. Their Los Angeles boats were fast, sure, but noisy as a sawmill, 7-bladed screws flinging wakes that echoed for miles. Why hide when you could outrun? The Akula's own prop was a brute. Reliable, uncloaked, churning silence at 28 knots with minimal bubble trail. Numbers backed it. Petrov's boat could ripple fire 8 fish before the Yankee even turned. "Wire hot, comrades," the weapons officer confirmed, eyes glued to the reel counter. The sonar shack buzzed, Petty Officer Lenayev's voice steady over the intercom. Torpedo Sierra 1 acquired. Yankee countermeasures. Prairie Masker engaged. Petrov nodded. Predictable. The Louisville's noise reduction pumps would churn water into froth, masking her signature temporarily. But Soviet torpedoes pierced that veil. Their logic was forged in real hunts, not simulations. He pictured the carrier kill chain. Oscars loosing granites on the Nimitz from 500 clicks out. Visible behemoths belching radar returns like beacons. Subs like this 688 were escorts, disposable fodder. Swarm them with Victors, rugged workhorses with twin screws and hulls that laughed at ASW pings. And the battle group crumbled. The wire twitched. Torpedo closing, 4 clicks. Yankee evading port, cavitating hard. Lenayev's tone sharpened. Petrov leaned in, savoring the hunt. Their Akula was efficiency incarnate. OK 650 reactor thumping 190 megawatts steady, no Yankee turbo alternators whining under load. Crew of 80, hardened by Black Sea quals and Arctic scrams. Men who jury-rigged flooded compartments with epoxy and prayers. The Seawolf intel from Lubyanka? Laughable. That pump jet gimmick would howl in turns. Sokolov's models predicted shaft line vibrations at 10 hertz, brighter than a lighthouse to flank arrays. Then, a glitch. Lenayev's voice cracked. Con sonar. Sierra 1 transient. Prop transient then. Gone. No flow noise. No screw tones. Prairie Masker off. Contact lost. Petrov's gut tightened, but he barked a laugh. Decoy Bloom, she's playing dead, active ping her. The MGK 540 pulsed, a low-frequency growl sweeping the baffles. Echoes returned. Ice keels, biology pings, thermal layers fracturing like glass, but no steel whale. Reacquire passive, he snapped. Silence stretched, broken only by the boat's own hum, fans whirring, hydraulics sighing. The control room tensed. A mid-watch officer wiped sweat from his brow. Yankee trickery, nothing more. Their digital sonars overloaded in clutter. Soviet racks filtered it raw. Sonar depth, 300 meters, Petrov ordered, diving the Akula into the cold lens, a thermocline shield. Still nothing. Minutes bled. At 8 clicks, the wire from Torpedo 1 went slack, fuel expended circling harmlessly. Reload 2 and 3, she's close, must be. Lenayev's screens flickered green voids. Negative contacts, Comrade Captain. Ambient only. Wait. Faint biologicals, bearing 270. Petrov's certainty cracked like thin ice. Doctrine said flood the sector. But where? The Louisville should be wallowing, pumps gasping, crew yelling in English panic. Instead, the ocean lied. He flashed back to war games. Akulas sinking 688s by the dozen, outlasting their batteries in stern chases. Simplicity won. No exotic propulsors to seize, no optics masts begging for periscope shears. Their delta bastions were safe. Typhoon squatting 500 meters down with SSN-20s, guarded by this very swarm. A ping, sharp, alien, not theirs. Con, sonar, active sonar contact, low-frequency broadband, bearing 180, range 3 clicks, Doppler shift, 25 knots closing fast. Petrov's blood iced. Counterfire, all tubes. But the intruder was already inside the baffles, a shadow slithering from the blind arc. No prop wash, no machinery growl. Just a ripple, a pressure ghost. The sonar shack erupted. Transient amidships, torpedo away, Mk-48 ADCAP signature. Klaxons screamed. The Akula shuddered as countermeasures ejected, UWT decoys blooming gas and noise. Petrov gripped the ladder, roaring evasive turns. Cavitate, full flank. The reactor groaned to 35 knots, prop thrashing foam. But the American fish ignored the chaff, homing unerringly, wire-guided phantom threading the decoy wall. It struck at frame 45, a muffled thunderclap, the hull buckling inward. Lights flickered, water howled through seams. Petrov tumbled, tasting blood as bulkheads groaned. Damage report. Alarms wailed, shaft seals breached, flooding forward. The Louisville? A feint. This was the real beast. Seawolf prototype, trialed covert in the gap. Her pump jet a shrouded whisper propelling 9,100 tons silent as a specter. No cavitation blades, just laser-aligned impellers spinning void quiet at 35 knots. Anechoic tiles thicker than Akula rubber, absorbing pings like flesh. Her BQQ-10 suite drank the Barents chaos, spheric arrays painting Petrov's boat, while hers vanished into swell. In the chaos, Lenev screamed over dead comms. It's impossible. No noise, fainter than the ice. Petrov clawed to the plane's table, charts blurring. The silent killer wasn't myth. It had ghosted under the Louisville's wake, exploited the baffles, fired from 2 clicks undetected. Soviet sonars, brute kings of open ocean, choked on her nothingness, a black hole in the acoustic sea. The Akula listed, air thick with ozone and fear. Petrov keyed the 1 VP. Surface, emergency blow. But too late. The second fish loomed, its growl the last sound before the abyss claimed them. The laughter from Lubyanka echoed hollow now, drowned in the sea's indifferent roar. The West's fragility, a mask for murder. Their invisible assassin had struck, and the swarm scattered like chaff. Moscow, Lubyanka bunker. 3 weeks after the Barents incident. The same smoke-choked chamber, but the air now tasted of ash and defeat. Admiral Viktor Kuznetsov hunched over the briefing table, his metals dulled under the harsh fluorescent glare. No projector this time, just a stack of encrypted teleprints from Severomorsk, stained with coffee rings and frantic annotations. Captain Yuri Petrov's Akula, K-298, was gone. Hull crushed at 450 meters, 82 souls with her. Official story, training accident reactor scram. But the survivor logs, smuggled by a shaken SOSIS tender captain, told the truth. A ghost had come calling. Kuznetsov crushed his Belomorkanal in a fist like a hammer. Petrov was the best. His MGK 540 should have painted that Yankee from horizon to horizon. Dr. Ivan Sokolov, the hydroacoustics wizard, stood pale as deep water, clutching acoustic waterfalls printed from the Akula's black box recorder. The graphs were damning. Sierra 1's death, a masterful feint by the Louisville, her prop wash a decoy bloom masking the real killer. Then nothing. No shaft whine, no pump growl, no hydraulic sigh. Just the Seawolf's BQQ-10 sphere array, sipping the Barents cacophony like fine vodka, plotting Petrov's baffles with surgical calm. The room fell silent as Sokolov unrolled the tape transcripts. Petrov's voice crackled through tinny speakers. Contact lost. Impossible. Torpedo inbound. Then the crunch. Hydrophones capturing the Mk-48's broach, its 292-kilo Torpex charge crumpling the Akula's pressure hull like foil. No evasion possible. The Seawolf had closed to 800 meters undetected, her pump jet propulsor, a precision impeller shrouded in flow-straightening vanes. spinning at 35 knots with less radiated noise than a Delta Phi's ocean swell. Anechoic tiles, 2 layers thick, devoured active pings. Her propulsor duct eliminated tip vortices, turning cavitation into myth. Soviet sonars, kings of the roar, starved in her wake. Petrov's last transmission, garbled on Elf buoy. Seawolf confirmed. Silent. Hunts us like wolves in snow. Kuznetsov slammed the table, rattling vodka glasses. The laughter from their last meeting echoed like a bad dream. They'd mocked the complexity. 9,100 tons of digital fairy dust, optics masts for satellite links, crew quarters with bunks for all 140. No hot bunking like Soviet sardines. But complexity was the blade. The Seawolf's advanced conformal array flanked her hull like invisible ears, processing terabytes of broadband chaos where MGK 540 racks drowned in clutter. She didn't sprint blindly. She stalked, her common submarine radio room fusing ELINT, ESM, and acoustics into God's eye kills. Captain Petrov's deputy, now nursing burns in a Murmansk ward, had radioed the horror before blackout. It fired from our blind spot, no warning. Our swarm, scattered, victors pinged blind. Kuznetsov pictured it, the Barents pack fracturing. 3 Akulas vectored late, their flank arrays chasing ghosts, while the Seawolf slipped the net, circling back for the baitfish. Soviet doctrine crumbled. Numbers meant nothing against invisibility. Their Oscars could glass a Nimitz from 550 kilometers, granite screaming at Mach 2.5, 750-kilo warheads vaporizing flight decks. Carriers were bullseyes, radar beacons begging for death. But this? One Seawolf could prowl the bastions undetected, threading Irtish hydrophone webs, putting steel on Delta IV keels before a single SS N-18 launched. Sokolov traced the graphs, voice hollow. Her signature at 25 knots, 95 decibels quieter than our Akulas at cruise, fainter than biology. Our passives heard the Louisville's decoy, but she was the shadow. The room's chuckles were ghosts now. Kuznetsov's deputy paced, face ashen. The boomers, Admiral. Typhoons in Okhotsk, deltas off Kola if one Seawolf slips in. He trailed off. The math was merciless. US had 50-plus fast attacks to Soviet 60, but quality eviscerated quantity. Seawolf prototypes, SSN-21, tested covert since '89, ran circles around Victor III's in Groton trials, sinking simulated typhoons without a ripple. Panic seeped in like ballast water. Teleprints piled, NATO exercises off Norway, Seawolf shadows trailing Oscar patrols, vanishing into layers. Soviet admirals sleepless, redeploying Akulas to hunter-killer screens, 2 per boomer, burning reactors hot. But the fear gnawed deeper. Carriers, swarmable targets, defended by noisy escorts. Seawolf, the assassin in the dark, her 50-tube VLS arsenal, tomahawks for land strikes, ADCAPs for subs, turning bastions into graveyards. One boat could decapitate the SSBN fleet, neutering the nuclear triad before ICBMs ignited. Kuznetsov lit another cigarette, smoke-veiling eyes rimmed red. We laughed at their weight, their gadgets. 60 tons heavier? It buys silence. Sokolov nodded grimly. Pump jet aligns flow laminar, no blade slap. Our props cavitate like kettles. The Admiral stared at the maps. Gyuk Gap, fortified, but cracks everywhere. Petrov's Akula was the warning shot. Next time, a typhoon. Their philosophy, brutal simplicity, endless numbers, had blinded them. The West didn't build fragile toys. They forged scalpels. Whispers spread through the fleet. Copy the pump jet, beg for conformal arrays. But too late for pride. Kuznetsov raised his glass. No toast this time. Just a murmur. We saw the clown. It was the knife. Outside, Moscow's chill deepened, mirroring the abyss where K-298 rested. The Soviet Navy's certainty shattered, replaced by a dread colder than the Barents floor. One silent sub outweighed 100 visible carriers. Their laughter died that night, and fear took the helm. Months later, The echo of K-298's implosion reverberated through the Kremlin's labyrinthine corridors, a ghost in the machine of Soviet power. Admiral Viktor Kuznetsov, once the unassailable bear of the Northern Fleet, now chain-smoked in his Yasenevo dacha, maps of the Barents bastions crumpled under his boots. The teleprints had multiplied into a blizzard of redacted reports, sea-wolf sightings off Spitsbergen, shadows trailing Delta patrols, vanishing before MGK 500 sonars could lock. Petrov's black box had been dissected in a Sevastopol lab, its acoustic tapes played on loop, a symphony of Soviet certainty dissolving into static screams. The room that once rang with laughter now hosted wake after wake for doctrines dead. Kuznetsov summoned Sokolov again, this time alone, under the flicker of a kerosene lamp to evade bugs. No more briefings for the Politburo optimists. This was admiral to scientist, man to man. Tell me it's not our ears, Ivan. Tell me the Yankees cheated physics. Sokolov spread fresh spectrograms, ink lines spiking like shattered ice. The Seawolf's signature at 20 knots, a whisper below 90 decibels, drowned by shrimp snaps and whale farts. Her pump jet, a titanium-shrouded vortex of counter-rotating blades, eliminated the propeller's fatal flaw. Tip cavitation. No bubbles, no broadband hiss. Just laminar flow, engineered to 25 knots, quiet as a sleeping child. Soviet props? Hammers on anvil. Even the silent Akulas at 110 decibels cruise, beacons in the deep. It's philosophy, Admiral, Sokolov murmured, voice raw from all-night sims. We built for the storm, rugged shafts, manual throttles, crews who fought floods with bare hands. They built for the void, computers fusing sonar spheres into God's view, predicting our turns before we dreamed them. Kuznetsov nodded, tasting bile. The carriers had been their delusion's cornerstone. Nimitz-class Titans, 333 meters of floating airfields, radar horizons screaming for granites. One Oscar II salvo, 24 missiles at 550 kilometers, Mach 2.5 sprints with 750-kilo warheads, could slag a battle group. Doctrine gospel, visible targets die first. Subs like Victors swarmed the escorts, numbers turning chaos to victory. 250 boats against NATO's 90, quantity's quality. But the Seawolf inverted it all. One boat, SSN-21, the prototype Wolf, could infiltrate the Okhotsk bastion, ghost past Irtish nets, stalk a typhoon at 500 meters. 8 tubes, 50 VLS cells, Mk-48s wire-guided to the boomers' baffles, Tomahawks gutting command posts ashore. No launch warning. SSN-20 sturgeons silent in their tubes as the Delta crumpled. Kuznetsov saw it in nightmares. Petrov's fate scaled up, typhoon pressure hulls folding like paper, 48,000 tons and 200 warheads to the bottom. Their nuclear deterrent, heart of the triad, neutered pre-dawn. Carriers bait. The invisible knife cut the spine. The admiral poured vodka, glasses clinking like hull cracks. We humanized our machines, T-72s that any conscript could drive through mud, Akulas fixed with wrenches, brutal efficiency. Sokolov sipped, eyes hollow, and they dehumanized theirs, Seawolf's crew, 140 specialists in ergonomic tombs, no hot-racking hell. Her BQQ-10 array, spherical, conformal, processes gigahertz of noise where our passives guess. In Groton trials leaked by Mitrokhin, she sank 3 simulated Oscars blind. Soviet analysts had pored over it. The beast's width bought stability, her 9,100-ton stability in turns, no wallow. Exotic propulsors? Aligned shaft lines vibrating at subhertz, silenced by viscoelastic mounts. Complexity wasn't fragility, it was predation perfected. Panic rippled the fleet. Kuznetsov ordered Akula packs tripled around boomers. Reactors redlined, crews sleepless. Viktor III stripped for speed, props reprofiled in frantic Severodvinsk yards, but cracks widened. 1990 exercises off Kola, Seawolf shadows killing 2 deltas in hours. Admirals whispered of defector tapes from Groton. Seawolf at 35 knots flank, quieter than Los Angeles at idle. Their Los Angeles Flight 3 upgrades, pumped jet retrofits were echoes. But Seawolf was Genesis, designed to hunt typhoons like wolves on elk. Philosophies grave deeper. Soviets trusted men over machines, endurance over elegance. Hot-bunked sailors quoting Lenin amid reactor steam. Repairs mid-patrol with epoxy and spite. Yankees trusted silicon, fault-tolerant codes rebooting sonars in milliseconds, AI predicting torpedo dodges. Simplicity endured battles. Sophistication won wars unseen. Kuznetsov crushed his cigarette on the map. K-298's grave circled in red. We swarmed carriers because they shone. This, it devours light. Sokolov unrolled prototypes. Project 945R improved Sierra sketches. Pumpjet mock-ups begged from Gorky yards. We copy, Admiral, or die. Kuznetsov stared into the flame. Orders flew. Billions rerouted from Oscar granites to silencing tiles. Conformal arrays. The carrier-killer doctrine pivoted. Boomer screens first, subs as prey. But doubt festered. Seawolf's sisters built SSN 22, 23 prowling the gap. Winter thawed into Gorbachev's perestroika chill, 1991 dawning blood red. Kuznetsov, sidelined to desk, watched the motherland fracture. The Seawolf never fired in anger. Cold War's end spared the abyss, but her shadow sank the Soviet soul. Numbers yielded to the null. Brutality bowed to the blank. They stopped laughing in Lubyanka, ceased toasting doctrine. They feared the silent one more than carrier armadas, for she proved the truth. Arrogance in logic is the first casualty. And in the end they began to imitate the ghost they mocked. Too late for the wolves, but just in time for the wolves to fear no more.